Welcome, everybody, to this special edition of the Midas Touch podcast. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by your favorite, though I can't offend some of my other co-hosts, one of your amongst the favorite co-hosts, Dina Doll, right here. Everybody should know that Dina and I actually go way back when I was a second or first year associate at a law firm. I had a case against Dina's law firm. I was representing one side. Dina was on the other side. The case went to trial. It was like a real intense trial against each other. That's where I met Dina, going back to 2011, 2012, even before the trial, depositions together anyway. So Dina and I go way back. But on this special edition, Dina, we're going to flip the script. Dina's going to interview me, and we're going to speak about this current moment that we're in as a country, where you have Donald Trump threatening to arrest governors, sending military to and mayors, sending the military into blue states and blue cities, activating the National Guard from Texas and sending them there. At a time where we have a government shutdown, where Trump wants to rip away people's health care from the American people, and their messaging is just disastrous also. And we should probably talk about that, Dina, which is, it seems that Trump and what MAGA is used to getting away with when corporate news dominated, it's changed. Independent news has changed the game. People are getting their news sources, accurate information, other places. They're all over the place. The American people are rightfully blaming them, even though they have $1 trillion propaganda network. So with that said, let me pass it over to Dina Doll.
So thank you for sitting down and talking with me. I feel like we get to hear from you a lot, obviously, with the breaking news and with your co-hosting of your podcast. But I'm hoping I'm bringing a perspective of the mightiest mighty to pick your brain, because you are at the center of everything and breaking so much of the news. So let's just get into it here. First of all, this is the second time I interviewed you. I interviewed you for the first time, like at the end of January. I think we were just starting this like disastrous last 6 months. I think you and I obviously were dreading what was coming, but I think we can agree it's so much even worse than we were thinking it was going to be. But also at the same time, Midas has just blown up. And I guess I can credit myself for being the first one to interview you, but definitely not the only one. We've seen press after press after press, acknowledging what you and your brothers have built over these past few years. And strategically, we're ended up being in this moment of a foundation that not only elected officials could go to, but frankly, Democrats and people who care about truth and democracy could come and find real news. And I just want to have you comment just quickly on the Vanity Fair headline, which I thought was perhaps the most on point of all of the many news that you got, which is the Trump resistance won't be televised. It'll be on Midas Touch. What does that mean to you? You started this during COVID with your brothers, and to have a publication like Vanity Fair, kind of not only acknowledging what you have built, but seeing what you have built being that important to literally be televising the resistance against this most authoritarian regime we've ever seen.
Well, I think the growth has been spurred by listening to what the people were experiencing. When you listen, you hear what people are going through, and you're able to address those concerns and build a media network around it. And so it's all a testament to the Midas Mighty in this incredible community. But when I think about those headlines, and when I think about, the press that has developed around this network, I try not to get bogged down in it solely because there's a few things going on. Number one, every day we have to wake up and we have to win that day of getting the truth out. And it's not an easy task when on the other side, they have this hose of disinformation to bend reality, and they can literally say and do essentially anything at all. and it's normalized by a corporate media apparatus and what I've referred to as a state regime apparatus. So every day, is grueling. I mean, last night I was writing a Substack at midnight and I literally fell asleep. And this happens frequently while I'm writing it. And then I wake up and I go, oh man, I got to finish writing it, because I fall asleep writing because I'm recording the videos and doing the shows all day. But then separately, I'm thinking about when you reflect on a headline like that, what does that mean when we're in the moment right now of this battle, of this fight, where Trump's literally sending masked agents who have weapons patrolling streets like we never expected to see, and disappearing human beings into concentration camps, and sending the National Guard from Texas to invade Chicago, and having Kristi Noem go to Portland and look down at a group of 12 people wearing chicken outfits and saying that this is a war-ravaged community, and prosecuting their political enemies. What are we doing to combat that and fight that? But then also generationally, I think, how do we get out of this loop that we're in? And we have to get out of this loop, not just for a 4-year period of time after this, but generationally, we have to break this Trumpy and MAGA cycle so that we can become a nation again that loves each other and helps each other and builds for a better America, and does not relish in the suffering of the other. That seems to be a major theme of a very Trumpy world. So it's a long-winded answer, but it's to say I'm glad at headlines like that. It's meaningful, but it's reflective of the community. But we have to build for the future, because if we get complacent by good press, there's going to be bad press, good press, all press. We have to think about, we are the media of the future. We are the news network of the future. And how do we build that?
And I think you have shown a lot of courage, where bigger corporations, deeper pockets have folded, right? Law firm after law firm. You and I are lawyers. I used to work at one of those big law firms, not one exactly that folded, but it's painful to see lawyers who know better fold. News companies folding, so many companies folding. And I just wanted to quote one of your recent Substacks. It's an honor to lead this network that has never wavered in its mission to fight for the people and to resist the authoritarian regime, no matter what the threats and no matter what they try to do to us. In this moment, that's not an easy thing to say. You go on to say they will never silence the Midas Touch Network and this movement. And I could have picked from more than 24 Substack articles that have a very similar tone and a very similar rhetoric. And not many people have the courage to be able to continue that fight and the resistance, and frankly, be so vocal about it. So why do you choose to be so vocal about the fact that you're like, hey, I'm going to keep doing this, whatever may come? How do you make that happen?
Because I feel absolutely blessed with the life that I have. And I feel that through the education that I have, through being a lawyer, that I've been fortunate enough to have a platform and a skill set to fight for people. I mean, look, as we're recording this, I'm sitting in a living room where I have a camera. I had breakfast this morning. I get to go after I record these videos, I go with my wife and our little baby girl to a store down the street where we get coffee. We come back and I get record. So I actually don't view what I'm doing as courageous so much as I'm doing all that I could be doing, I think, in this moment, which was also difficult, leaving a law practice, but I'm doing what I could be doing in this moment. And I think to myself, though, I'm not on the front lines of Ukraine or even, somewhere in Ukraine. I'm not in Gaza right now with bombs being dropped. And I'm not in a location right now where, there's atrocities taking place, on a daily basis, or throughout the world where there's starvation and famine and mass death. And, I'm blessed. I reached the age of 40. I have a family, and I feel the only thing that I could be doing in this moment is utilizing the skill set I have to advocate for others who need an advocate right now. And that's what I tried to do as a lawyer to the best of my ability, but to translate those skills in a mass media environment to be a voice. And I hope to be a helpful voice. I'm not always going to get it right. I'm going to always try to get better, but I think the North Star is planted towards the direction of how do I uplift and not punch down? And how do I set that example? And I hope it's not a morbid view to express that life is short, and at some point we're all not going to be here. And I just rather live the life of saying I did everything I can while I was here to try to improve people's happiness and uplift than every day having to wake up and suck up to a right-wing fascist regime that just puts a pit in my stomach every day and knows that it's hurting and harming people. When you break down the ultimate message of a Midas and then the ultimate message of right-wing influencers will always say things like, we don't like empathy, and there's a mockery. They just say empathy is a bad word, and saying these things about migrants and human beings. And while Midas is forceful in the language that we use to call out the threats and to advocate for positions that we believe in, I think what holds and binds the community together is that it is pointed in the direction of empathy and love. And these are human beings that we're talking about here. And I said, if I was walking down the street right now and I saw a little puppy or a dog that was limping and all alone, I would do my best to try to help. I wouldn't just go or you fill in the blank. So why would we be treating human beings as though they are like illegal people who deserve pain and suffering to be stripped of their dignity is a hard concept for me to even understand. So to me, it reflects just here's where we are in this moment, and here's the only way I know how to react to and process this. But as I've said, I'm not always going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to do my best every day to advocate for people.
And I think you're kind of speaking to like how I would see it is that the work you do with Midas is a reflection of who you are as a person. And as you said, I've had a chance to see you as a person, and I can say that you are exactly who you are behind the cameras as you are in front of the cameras. And your lovely wife, Sochi, who completely supports you on what really is, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the hardest job in the news business. You are available 24/7, regardless of the day of the week. You are breaking news. That it requires a lot of support, and which is amazing. You guys are doing this all together. And also you're being the teacher that you are. I've had a chance to see you in the classroom and talk to some of your students. And I think that is revealing in terms of how you go about, kind of like you said, like the limping street and the dog. You show up to these classrooms and you mentor these kids beyond the classroom. You really want them to succeed. This isn't about you trying to even like grow Midas, right? Or for any personal gain. And I think that sense of mentoring, you kind of also do it to all of us on Midas as a contributor. I've gotten some great mentoring tips from you, but also the community. I have met so many people who watch Midas Touch from different states, red states, blue states, different professions, across the board. But I can say everybody I have spoken to is so incredibly informed. The care that you give to people in your life and to your students, you give to us as a community because there is not this sense that, oh, this person's not going to understand that, so I'm not going to go into detail. Or, I want them to think a certain way, so I'm only going to present this one point of view. The honesty, the authenticity, and frankly, just the sheer volume of information I think is a key component of your success. And to that point, I have a question from a Midas Mighty that I wanted to, and again, the most thoughtful question. You have the members of this community are so thoughtful, so informed. And let me just pull it up.
As you're pulling it up there, I'll say this though, but I think that if we want to win, one, the information landscape out there, but two, just be good people, I think we have to focus most on the human condition, even over politics. And I've said this before, and people, may or may not believe it. I said, I don't really like politics, which is interesting because it's a political media company, but I always say politics obscures the ability, I think, to sometimes identify the facts because it's translated through a blue team, red team, you're this side, that side, which if I'm on this side, I must think these issues, when in reality, we need to be more geared towards the human condition. And then our politics can match the human condition versus doing it in the reverse way and saying, what's our politics? And then finding the human condition. What Trump is he's a vessel for a certain type of philosophy and thinking. Philosophy augments it a little bit, but a certain type of thinking, which is not unique to Trump. It finds its other vessels in Putin, in Orban, in right-wing movements, in Le Pen, in France, in highly nationalistic. They call themselves a reform party in the UK, but it's kind of like calling Trump social media truth. The way we saw a right-wing movement developing in Canada before Elbows Up took root. I mean, it's a global concept of framing this anti-immigrant, nationalistic, supremacistic kind of language and saying anti-woke, punching down, bullying, ultimately led by an authoritarian at the top, and a dismantling of a democracy. That's a whole thinking, and that thinking is a wave that is pushing over and trying to counter an enlightened thinking that led to the foundation of our Constitution and was a reaction to the authoritarianism of the Dark Ages. And with all of the massive amounts of information that exists right now, in many ways, the more information deconstructs information and brings us back to a dark age information system where we're not getting good data and good information because there's actually so much. So the promise of all the new data has had this counterintuitive impact. So you're not going to beat that ideology of hate by saying what's a Democratic position or what is a Liberal Party or Labor Party position. You fundamentally are not going to get a sweeping mindset. So the only way you can combat that is by challenging it with another philosophical premise, one built on empathy and love and building people up and saying this is not the way. The way of authoritarianism leads to destruction and death. And even if you are self-interested, this path is going to hurt you and cause you pain and future generations. Here's another worldview, one of empathy and love, where we can be happy and love our neighbors and community and do our best to promote optimism. And then you find that and you pair that with politics. And that's, to me, a framing that lots of people miss the point of, and they're too focused on the game of red team, blue team, purple team. But that, to me, is what's really taking place internationally and why Midas appeals to mining towns in northern Canada. It's like what conservative mining towns like Midas.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell you? It tells you that if you're speaking to the human condition, these concepts are transmutable across boundaries.
Oh, it's crazy that you say that, because I just went to like an event where somebody was asking a candidate, how do you distill a complicated message and inform the voters what you're thinking? And I immediately went to, the issues aren't complicated. The issues are simple. It is about the people. It's about, do I have enough money to buy my food? Do I have healthcare? Am I safe? Like, the issues are simple. It is about the people. And I think you can talk about any of the most controversial or complicated issues, and it is simple when you just talk about the people. But it's funny because that question that I was looking for the Midas kind of speaks exactly to what you are just saying, which I've been thinking too, and I imagine you've been thinking also. And it's this idea, and I'm going to read the question in a second, but you know, Trump is really a lame duck president, right? I mean, he acts as if he isn't, but he is. And although he is unique in his evilness, let's say, he's also a puppet, right? And this kind of leads into this question by Rob. He says, obviously and factually, the GOP has been all about winning and not about governing for many years. GOP senators and Congress people are more about owning the libs rather than doing what is best for their constituents. Once Trump is gone, parenthetical, which can't be soon enough, how can we best show their voters, constituents, that their elected representatives were complicit in Trump's grift, lies, and poor governance? Also, looking forward to Midas getting a press credentialed Washington correspondent to be a presence in the White House and Capitol Hill. Hold truth to power, Ben and Dina.
Yeah, and these dark times also reflect an incredible opportunity where there can be a realignment of political views, because taken to its current form, we see how Trump's policies are harming farmers, how they are harming construction, manufacturing. And ultimately, though, we also need leaders to lead and explain that to people right now, and not be falling into these traps because of what they see on X or this social. You have to lead with conviction, and you have to let people know what the truth is. Like when I saw union leaders wavering on former Vice President Kamala Harris, I was like, you're a union leader. This guy hates unions. Like, the guy literally says he hates your existence. He said it. We have video clips of him saying he wants to destroy you, but you're going to reconfigure it in your own mind because you don't like transgender people. Grow up and stop hating on marginalized communities. Like, what are you doing? And just be, what the hell's going on? So anyway, I see this as actually an opportunity to make that argument. And look, I know lots of people were very critical, as was I, of Democratic leader Schumer and Jeffries. And I think you had every right to be, especially House Democrats, Senate Democrats, not fighting enough. I think they are focused on the right issue right now, healthcare, which is so critical to all of us. It's something that we all relate to, seeing those Affordable Care Act subsidies and who can really afford to pay for $2,000, no matter what income bracket you're. I mean, it's a lot of $2,000, $3,000 a month to be paying for health insurance if these subsidies aren't extended, not to mention if you're on Medicaid, you're Medicaid, and they are relentlessly repeating the message. And finally, something clicked. And so in a moment like this, it's why I finally had on Leader Schumer and Leader Jeffries on the same day, because I wanted to showcase through a Midas lens, with the types of questions I was asking, whether or not they were going to fight or not. So my questions on those interviews were geared towards that, this, are you fighting? Like we don't want to hear, we don't want you to cave. Are you standing with the people? And I left that interview, and I'll say it, I thought that they both handled those interviews well. And I think they advanced the conversation and saying, let's go. Let's do this conversation in public. Let's do it transparently. What are you scared of? This is, I'm seeing a shift literally in real time as we're doing this interview.
And that kind of just goes to my last little point, because I know we're running out of time, that I have seen a shift in you, I would say, and the channel maybe a little bit, becoming a little bit more of an activist, not just, or I wouldn't really say you were ever just a news channel. You had this community, but, between supporting the No Kings protest, and really amplifying other activist groups. And you can argue, I was journalism major before I went to law school, that news has always had a form of activism, right? The Hearst publications, and now we're seeing mainstream media having had their own form of activism and deciding what to show and what not to show. But is this something that we're going to see more of? Are you going to run for office one day, Ben? Or, where does or is this, just kind of organically happening, this activism within the network kind of bubbling up more?
Yeah, I have no plans to run for office, although that's something that someone who has plans to run for office would say, but I really don't. I think that this network provides the kind of the outlet for me personally and professionally, but also there's, I think, a bigger impact. And I think my role is developing and continuing to grow this network. I think in terms of activism versus media, I think that the activists are doing incredible work. And I think that they don't get enough attention for the great work they're doing. No Kings and all the prior protests were incredible accomplishments of bringing people together in ways that we hadn't seen mass mobilization in history, but it was not getting that type of attention from corporate news, the same way corporate news wouldn't cover Bernie Sanders events or AOC events, but they'd always cover a Trump rally. So I believe that with the platform that I have, I think it's important to cover the great work of activists. It's to me newsworthy. It is, I can't think of many things that are much more newsworthy than when you bring tens of millions of people together in mass mobilization, or when Bernie Sanders is in Portland, Maine and filling arenas in an off election year, or going to Salt Lake City and filling an arena, which won't get covered at all in the news. That I think what's more news, that's a pretty incredible thing. And most of the places that Bernie goes to are red states or purple states or places that voted for Trump. I mean, he was in, where was it? West Virginia, recently filling up stadiums. So to me, with this platform comes a responsibility to highlight things and to uplift through the lens of the media network. And I think the same way Fox wants to spend its time talking about, whatever, green M&Ms somehow being, I don't know, anti-men. I don't know whatever their stupid issues are of the day, or women in the jeans and people don't like sexy women in jeans or whatever that, I don't even know what their stories are, or Jesse Waters saying that Stephen Miller is like a man's man. Okay, that's what they want to spend their lens on. Okay. I want to spend our lens, just showing you what's happening and what people are experiencing at town halls. And so to me, it's more editorial choices than per se activism. But to your point, there's a lot Meidas is covering now internationally that we didn't before. And that's a maturing of the network. Before, my skill set was I'm a litigator and a lawyer, and I was starting a news network, and I was covering the election basically and what was happening around that. But then I realized, as a maturing of the network and learning from mistakes, and should I have covered this and should I have covered that? This is a brave new world of independent media, that maybe I missed things. Maybe I should be having an international perspective. Maybe I should be covering the links to what's happening, because it's not simply Donald Trump v. Biden or Kamala or this governor or that governor. There's a broader international situation. And I have a responsibility. So, but I have to also learn and read and watch and become educated. So I'm not just saying things, and actually kind of contributing. And then when it comes to the activist space, my background was I was someone as a litigator who would be on the streets, though, in Bakersfield with families protesting against excessive force, whether they were Republicans or Democrats. I didn't really care. But I was with the families when Kern County back in 2014 to 2017 had the highest police shooting deaths per capita anywhere in the United States. So my background is in that. But also it's important, in my view, having worked with activists in the past, to have a great deal of deference and respect to what they're doing, not step on their toes, but to appropriately uplift within the confines of what they want, because to me, they're the central heroes really about what's going on now. The people who are on the ground, the protesters, the people every day who are out there on the street.
What would be your one sentence message to tell people how to get through even to the midterms, let alone once his term ends? But, people are feeling overwhelmed, discouraged. What do you tell?
I would just say this. I'll put a little comma in there. You hold the power, comma, don't let them take it from you, period.
Love that. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ben.
All other long-winded answers, that one I'll keep to a sentence.
Well, I'll remember a sentence. That's a good one. We'll have to use that on a just remember that phrase over and over. Thank you,
Dina. Thanks for all the work that you do on this network. We're grateful to have incredible hosts like you. And, that's the future of a network. The network is, yes, I'll do my takes in the morning. But, as the network evolves, to have hosts like you and others, who represent this network, it's a great thing for me to see.
Oh, so happy to do it. So grateful to be part of this movement.
I appreciate it. All right, everybody, hit subscribe. Dina Doll, get to 6 million subscribers. Have a good one, everybody.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.